It's Tuesday morning, time for a little Democracy 101. Jack Motlanthe is here, and we also have our own resident wise elder. I hope you don't mind that.
The beard is gray. So
well, Muzi, this is where we know that these things you earn the gray beard.
I guess so. Hey,
Gandalf the Grey. Muzi Kuzwayo is our guest today. He is no stranger to the platform, and he has been on the show a number of times. We've spoken to Muzi most recently about his book, South Africa's Promise. And there's so much in there that we're going to unpack during the course of Democracy 101. But you've also got some other thoughts you want to throw in. And because the point of this show is for all of us in this country to come to grips with our responsibilities, for us to figure out what democracy actually means to us, to figure out what our role is in creating and crafting our own future. And that's a wide array of subject matter. It's not something you can just zone in on in an hour and tick all the boxes. Yeah. So we are coming up to, and we say this every time because I think it's worth restating the obvious, one of our most important elections in any number of the last couple of years. And all of them are important. I don't want to get into the trap of doing what America does. This is the most crucial election. And then they said that in 2016. They said it in 2020. They're saying it again this year. America likes a bit of drama. But I think in South Africa, this is probably the most important one because it's a massive mark. It's a what do you call those things? Like the marker on the road. That
milestone.
Jesus. Blank on this. Milestone. 30 years into democracy, and a lot of changes in the air, and there are plenty of new parties that are raising their heads over the parapet wall that talks about what's happening to the ANC, what the opposition aren't getting right. There's so much to talk about. Where do you think we should start?
Is it a milestone? I think only history will tell that. We're too close to it to see. I think about how we talk about the left and the right. When we talk about politics, something that happened in 1789 or something like that.
French Revolution.
That's where it came from, and how people sat in parliament thereafter. Do they think that it was a milestone? There have been so many other revolutions, but it has been, and it changed history to a large extent. So we should do what we're supposed to do, just like the ants in a row. Going to get one thing at the end of the table, excuse me, to another end of the table. I always think our job is what it's the preamble of the Constitution says, to improve the quality of life of all citizens and free the potential of every person. That is what is to use what people call Kissingerian. The reason for existence is that's what our country is about. It's about freedom, and for you for Jack, young as you are, to explore your full potential and do things.
Are we doing okay at that? Because a lot of young people are feeling very left out of the system, and if that is our point, and I don't think that that's a bad purpose. If that's the point of a country, is to grant people the freedom to make their own way. To find and purchase their part of the future. Then how are we doing? Would you rate us at average, below average, or above?
Most progress follows the hockey stick. A friend of mine always says we start at the top and it goes down, and then we go really high, up high. So there's some things that we've done well. If I look at where I started, I think I've been very lucky. I think it's been great. I saw change, I think about, how you've seen how toddlers, when grandparents come, and the toddlers don't know anything. So often grandma is in front because, ladies first, or dad or grandpa was locking up the car. And the toddler comes running and walks past grandma to grandpa to hug grandpa. And I wonder, when I go to heaven, if I'm going to do that? I'm going to do that with my mother or with my grandmother? Who am I going to run to first? See, grand, I haven't seen you, on the other side of the grave. There's a story that a friend of mine, Max, once told me, that King Sopuza called Oliver Tambo in his latter days. He said, Tambo, I'm getting ready to go to heaven. So when the ANC stalwarts ask me, how is the movement? What must I say? So, and then Oliver told him, this is what is happening, this and that and that and the other. So the same thing. I guess if I meet my grandmother and say, how was life? I'm going to say, I was very lucky because I saw change. I grew up in a mining town. And I always thought a mine dump was a mountain. And those little streams that were there, we thought were rivers. You know, the acidic, and you weren't supposed to go play there because firstly it's acidic. And then you look at where we are today. It's been such huge change.
Yeah.
I can't say anything, but I was lucky. And one thing that I've always done is I've always been the cheerleader. I was never great at sport. I never played for any team, except for one where I think I played for. We used to have a soccer team that was called Highland Sparks because our section was called Highlands. And I played in the D team. And I was the reserve. So
that's about as bad as it gets.
That's about as bad as it gets.
But you make a very good point. We don't take stock of how far we've come. We always look to what's next. And we always set our default according to when things get better. In other words, we automatically upgrade, and then we're no longer grateful for the 5 upgrades that came before that. We just take this as the new default.
Yeah.
So, you know, you first get a bicycle, and you're like thrilled. You feel very lucky that you got a bicycle.
Yeah.
Then you manage to get your first car, and it's a cheap little car. It's something that you could just afford.
Yeah.
And even though it's old and it's not the best and it's got some paint issues and maybe the engine isn't 100%, but you're proud of it because it's your first car.
Absolutely.
Then you upgrade that and so on until eventually you're driving a very nice car. And then you're worried that you haven't got the best car, which is the next one. And you've forgotten how you felt when you had that bicycle or your first car. And maybe in South Africa, we also need to just learn to take stock and be grateful for where we've come from, because we have done incredible things in 30 years.
Absolutely. You know, I was thinking about the song we used to sing. A friend of mine, Sam, and Sam used to love the song. And it goes, Nancy Melo Yelo Ma We Ma Wim We Nancy Melo Yelo Ma We Ma. And then the line that would say, Mom, I'm going to die in prison. You know, and we believe that, we're going to die in prison. And then Sam had this line that everybody used to hate that said, Mama Enzo Munye, Mom, make another baby. Stop your nonsense.
So we did an interesting...
and look at where we are. And also, Gareth, you know, I think of our national anthem. It's not what it used to be or what we hoped it was going to be. I mean, I used to hate the stem. And I'm glad they took out the line that says, Ons sal lewe en ons sterwe, something like that. Oor Suid-Afrika, leave it, and something like that, right?
Ons sal lewe, ons sal sterwe.
We will live and we will die for you. And that flag would be flying on SABC
at midnight.
At midnight. I get so angry. So angry. And then, I mean, we had, when it was still banned, Nkosi Sikelel Africa, and it had the 3, obviously, Nkosi Sikelel Africa was different in different provinces slightly, you know? Like, Nkosi Sikelel, I mean, it was a protest song in that.
I heard the full Zulu version. Last year.
Yeah,
it was last year in April. I was in Kwamashu.
Is that right? Yes.
And they sang the proper one.
Yeah. Well, they're all proper.
But I remembered it because that's the way I learned it.
Is that right? Yeah. So for instance, now it says, which is it's how it's always been sung in the Eastern Cape, and actually as a hymn, Nkosi Sikelel Africa, Malupakanyisu Pondolwayo. We used to say, so the B's and the D's, you know what I mean? You would feel them, you know? And then, you know what I mean? It was like, you know? But a really great part, which is the one that's gone. You know, that's a problem with anthem that is written by a committee.
Yeah.
It was agreed.
Yes.
And they'd go when everybody, and then, okay, when it goes, Morena Bulu, Kasi Chaba Sesa Yesu, it will be the girls who normally say, More, and then the boys would go, oh, si bulu, okay, oh, and then, and then the last part, the one that's gone, that I think has made us poorer, is the part that says, you know, that time, once you finish that, you're looking for the police.
Yeah.
You're looking for the police.
It was a war cry.
Right. It was a war cry.
Yeah.
It's kind of been a little watered down, huh?
It's been watered down.
Yeah.
It's been.
But that happens when you have a country that you're trying to calm down rather than to hype up.
But that's where the magic is. That you're able to calm people down, and that's the magic, I think, of South Africa, being peacemakers.
Yeah.
We've lost that, you know, and I think, but it's a hockey stick. We're going to go up again.
I spent some time with Muzi and Pumi in Soweto on Thursday last week, and I mean I've been before, and so I'm not a tourist.
Yeah,
and I kind of I've been a couple of times, so it's really not. It's not to me what it would be to a foreigner. We joked. I said to Pumi, "What are all those whites doing there?" When we came to the Hector Peterson Memorial, and our guest, who is not used to people talking like that, was kind of shocked by this, you know. And he was asking questions about, like, are there whites who live in Soweto?
Yeah,
you know, because you showed us the white part of Soweto, where the guys who worked in the power plant near Orlando, they lived in a separate part of Soweto. And you think. These things seem ridiculous now, of like the white entrance and the black entrance to the doctors or the Home Affairs office or whatever. This is in living memory for many people. It's not that long ago.
Oh, absolutely. I
mean,
know,
and we've changed a lot. There's a lot that we've just taken for granted.
Absolutely. But I guess it's all in progress, and there will come a time where they say this was the last person who experienced apartheid. It's going to happen. That's how history is. Like,
it's like you see these people, the last World War I veteran.
Yeah, that's right.
There's this guy who's like in a wheelchair, and they wheel him out in front of the cenotaph, and then the next year he's gone, and that living history is gone.
Absolutely. But that's life. But that's why we built our houses with mud and grass, so that it disintegrates. You don't laden the next generations with the problems of the previous ones. And as we always say, those are matters for old people. You are a new generation. Focus on the things that make you better. That's taking the world forward.
You brought that up. So this is the last time we had you on.
Yeah.
There was huge controversy about something you said.
Yeah.
You remember it?
I don't remember.
You said we've got to wait for the old people to die out before things will change again.
I kind of agree with that sentiment a little bit. As you said, you just said it, that it's in living memory for a lot of people in this country. And I mentioned in the previous hour of the pedestal that the ANC has been put on in the minds of a lot of people who actually felt the brunt of apartheid. And as a result, I'm not sure that the people who have it as part of their living memory are so willing or open enough to even think of having a white man or woman running the country. And as a result, their voting patterns kind of follow the same arc. It will be ANC until we die, in a similar way to that song that you were singing earlier on. You know, it's almost a predetermined end that a lot of people have in their minds. I'm going to live in this country that was freed by this political party called the ANC. And a lot of them had lost kids and loved ones as part of the uprising that brought us
to the freedom we have now. It's like a sunken cost thing almost.
Yeah.
Like till Jesus comes, as Zuma said.
Yeah, politics is like that. I mean, the Democrats were in power for 60 years until Reagan broke in Congress, until Reagan broke that. Larry King believes in grants or welfare, as it's called, because his mother benefited from it until he died. So there will always be that kind of thing. I mean, the ANC has been around for more than 120 years.
Yeah.
So definitely it's a brand. It's established in people's hearts and minds. There was a lovely article I read many years ago about the church and African liberation movements. That how have the churches, the Methodist Church, that were symbols of colonialism, have outlived the resistance movements. So there are those things that are just ingrained, because although if you were to cut a person up, you won't see his soul. But there is that one thing that drives human beings. It's how they feel, how they love, how they hate, how they fear. And no matter what I may see as a problem, it may not be a problem to you, because as different people, we experience different problems, we see different opportunities, and that's why people vote the way they do. And also a perspective. A friend of mine says, we all have lenses. What I was talking about Painful and the singing that I had, it's a lens that I grew up in that environment. But there's a predisposition that people have when we talk about the left and the right. And the way he puts it, he says, the people on the left always look at the world from the oppressed's point of view. So this is how they're going to react. And the people on the right look at civilization, that we get, we're looking at civilization in the world. The guys on the left believe that the world is perfectible. We can make it better. The guys on the right believe the world becomes better if we continue with civilization. So in a way, they all want the same thing, just that how they get there. The other one uses a taxi, the other one uses a bus or whatever vehicle.
It's funny, this came up in a conversation I had last week with Douglas Murray, because I said to him, there's that famous quote from Robert Kennedy.
Yeah.
Some folks see the world as it is and say, why?
Yeah.
I see the world as it is and say, why not? Why can't we? Why I can't be perfect this? Kennedys were famously kind of left of center Democrats. For some people, the sentence ends at some people see the world as it is and say why. That's you question what whether it's fair or not is part of that, but it's something that's going to happen whether you try to change it or not. This idea that things are perfectible, this links back to the question I asked at the very beginning: how are we doing? Because happiness, personal happiness for a person, comes from expectations meeting reality. Like if you have unrealistic expectations, you'll never be happy, because you'll never actually reach those expectations. But you also, you don't want to be so realistic that you can't dream. There's a role to play from the old left and the old right. But you're a man who believes that that's also changed. I've spoken to you about this before. The old political ideologies don't necessarily map very well onto where we are now.
No, absolutely. They're not elegant. They can't be elegantly packed, because you were talking about Douglas Murray as we were in Soweto. Douglas Murray reads James Baldwin. I don't know how many leftists have read James Baldwin. Cornel West is his friend.
Right.
So these are very left, strong black writers and thinkers. So it often is the analysts who decide to package you and say you're racist, you're this, you're bad, you're good, without knowing a whole lot of other things that make you say the one thing that you say. And because we live in a world of tweets and bite-sized chunks, they pick that and run with it. So it's that kind of thing that happens. And there are so many other things, undercurrents that change history and the way we look at things and the way we do things. And often those are ignored. And I like to see the reason why. I like to go in deep and understand, why are we where we are? So that, because I believe if we know the reason, then it makes it easier for us to move forward, or to know that we're in the right place.
For whatever reason, I feel like a lot of people just aren't interested in asking those questions. There aren't too many people that ask why. I think when my mind goes back to the advent of 24-hour news channels.
Yeah.
Once in my mind, I could be wrong, but once that happened, information became so easily accessible that you'd hear the news headline and the story afterwards with the anchor just saying exactly what they need to say.
Mhm.
And that is it. You
Yeah.
Once you have that, you walk away thinking to yourself, okay, I'm well informed for the day, and you keep it moving.
And in the family, you're all watching the same TV.
Uh-huh.
Now there are 5 TVs. Now everybody's got his own cell.
Yep.
Some people have got 2 cell phones, and they're checking everything all the time.
And there's no discussion because you watch it and then you move on to the next thing. And instead of sitting around the table together as a family and discussing it, like, what do you think of this? What do you think of that?
Mhm.
People aren't actually unpacking and interrogating this stuff.
No.
Do you think we have too much information and not enough thinking and analysis? There's just info. It's like a blast of constant information, and we don't know how to deal with this.
There is, but also what algorithms have done is they do the thinking for us, and they've packaged this into our own little echo chambers.
Yeah.
Where we hear each other. In a way, that's also not bad, because that's always been the case. People vote in a particular way. People congregate in a particular way. But I think in the long term, as they say, the whole thing is bending over towards progress. I think there's been huge progress in South Africa. I think there've been massive challenges. And I think there's going to be some more progress. There are going to be bumps. And because we've got the highest Gini coefficient, means the difference between the haves and the have-nots is so wide. So every little gain that the have-nots have had, they treasure that. And the ones who've had stuff and lost stuff, for whatever reason, they worry too that things aren't going right, which is why the ANC keeps on winning and winning and winning. And I think the most important thing is to understand one another in the country, regardless of what politics is. That's how we make progress. That's how we move things forward.
Well, we've done something amazing, which is worthy of a little bit of analysis, thought, of kind of trying to figure where we've come from and where we're going to, and how much ground has been gained. And that is that we've created a middle class out of nowhere. There are suddenly millions of South Africans who have a very different life to the life their parents had.
Yes, Gareth. Sadly, it's halved, though.
Yeah, but for good or for bad, but we got there. I know it's halved in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
But we were on our way to make it grow and grow and grow. And we still see that there are lots of people who are better off than their parents were. But that's because their parents were so poor that coming out of the working class, the only way was up, right? What do you think those people, because those are the voters that everybody's trying to talk to.
And nobody's is talking to them in a way that touches their hearts.
So it's diminishing returns.
It's, So, I mean, I meet a lot of executives who were doing all right, they were middle class, and now they're stressed out. The economy is not performing. It's not performed for a lot of years. They had reserves, and those reserves are gone.
Yeah.
And it's the classic thing that happens before a revolution. But there's a book Dave Chappelle recommended, and I read it. I shouldn't have. It's called Pimp. It's probably one of the most difficult books I've ever read.
Yeah.
You read it?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's an unbelievably interesting book. And, a lot of people, when you hear that a pimp wrote a book, a lot of people would shy away from it. But let me tell you something.
Fascinating.
It is one of the most fascinating things I've ever read.
I think gruesome is the correct word.
Yeah, I mean, sure. But like the fact that human psychology can be warped and twisted and turned in that kind of way kind of lets you, for me personally, it taught me how to look for the psychopath in the room.
Is it the psychopath or the survivalist? The guy is just trying to survive.
See?
Everybody's trying to survive. And because they want to live, they end up doing all these, through our lens, horrible things.
Absolutely deplorable.
So it's written by a pimp.
It's written by a former pimp. And he says something, I mean, if you think of Richard Pryor, his father ran a brothel, and these are real. These are people who we look up to. But before we leave the book, Pimp, He says, a pimp is happy when his, I'm sorry to use the word, when his whores are still giggling because he knows they're sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
And we make all jokes about all of these things that are going wrong in the country. We're still sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's doing something horribly wrong,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So, I mean, I struggle to finish that book, but it's so addictive too.
Yeah.
But that's what the problem is we're giggling, but there's no food. Like they said, they accused Marie Antoinette of saying, let them eat cake. She never said that, apparently.
Yeah.
But they accused her of keeping some grain in a palace. So all of these things are happening. People are poor, and some of the people that we think are rich are probably poor as well. But we're giggling.
You know, like whenever we have these Democracy 101 chats, I always revert back to the idea that we need to play a major part in bringing the change we want to see. I refuse to believe that even during apartheid, I'm not saying every single person was an activist.
No, absolutely. No, there were people who were saying, Nenzani, what are you doing? No,
in fact, some people would pull you back and saying, you are going to get killed. Don't do that.
Absolutely.
Let us just, keep our heads down. Most probably they won't mess with us. Let's just, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I am also of the understanding that once things started moving in somewhat of a right direction, you had a lot more support than you had detractors, right? And I would imagine, I could be wrong. I would imagine that there were a lot more people who were willing to do even the smallest thing to add on to what the freedom fighters were already doing. For argument's sake, harboring someone in a corner room somewhere when the cops would try hunt some of these people down.
Mm-hmm.
Like those kind of things might seem small to the everyday person, but they play a huge part in bringing about that change. So what is our responsibility in the year 2024, in the midst of all of the hashtags and all of the, oversensitivity? I'm so triggered.
And
that was trauma, and it's and all in the midst of all of that stuff. What is our part?
I think a good society is where people go to work, come back, have a drink, and watch soccer. That's a good society because everything works.
Have a drink and watch soccer.
Just whatever sport. Yeah. Relax, have a good life.
Yeah.
Okay. The problem is we're going through a lot of things, and I think politics has become so big, and politicians have become celebrities, and very young people, good people, young people who should be entrepreneurs, who should be working, aren't doing that because there's nothing going on. That's why we're also interested in politics. There are many facets of life, and democracy, it's those things that push for democracy. It was song, it was art that pushed for the struggle, the songs that I was singing. My poor little cousin, Udovi, Vuyo, the first song he knew was Gooby, Gooby, Gooby. It was that's the first song I could sing. Gooby, Gooby, Gooby. He didn't even know what it meant.
Yeah.
But because he grew up in the 80s. He was born in 82, and and Lufuno, same thing. Those are the first songs that kids shouldn't be singing those songs. They should have been singing "Wake Me Up Before You Go Go," but nobody was playing that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's. I think we would have succeeded when more people are having a good time, a good life, rather than struggle. Struggle should not be something that we strive for, towards, what do you do in life? How was it when you go to heaven, when I get there? How was your life? I just struggled through it. I don't know.
Horrible.
I think that's horrible.
But there are so many people in politics who want to keep telling you that they are struggling, even if they're not. I mean, there's a lot of performative stuff going on because they think that in order to be considered a real leader and politician in South Africa, you have to have those credentials. And so you see a lot of people who have not struggled.
We don't even know
posturing.
How you don't even know the smell of tear gas.
Correct, but they're posturing.
They've never been hit by, forget a bullet, a stone. We used to have fights in the street. where we divide the street into two
Yeah, yeah.
halves.
Mm.
We throw stones at each other, and the worst are the swallows because they come in the birds. They kind of, it's like it's a game for them,
Mm.
and you duck, you think it's a bird, you think it's a stone, but the good rule of thumb is always duck because it could
Yeah.
be a stone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But these guys are pretending. They're performing the role of a struggle hero because that's what they thought a leader should look and sound and feel like.
Yeah, it's populism, and also fake credentials, really.
Mm.
But I think our job is what the Constitution says: free the potential of each and every person. We should try and focus on that, and put in people, ourselves up, or put in people who will help us achieve that goal. Because when everybody rises, then the country becomes better for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes I wonder if we've over-intellectualized things. Like, when I hear some of the conversations all over the globe, in fact, when be it politics or just the living standard for a lot of people, you hear things like Marxism and lefts, the what, you know what I mean? Right wing, right. And we have these conversations where we almost deconstruct things to the point whereby when someone who's listening to the conversation is like, my goodness, where do I even start?
That was the fall of Black consciousness. They over-intellectualized everything. Everything was just was Marx, had to be deconstructed.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the ANC came, they came with a slogan, and it was also Kichi.
Mm-hmm.
Also Kichi. And people, and these were like, Marx says this, and of course the Pan-Africanists were thugs to a large extent. Matsunya and they were, they were. You know what killed the Pan-Africanist Congress, which is a great pity? It died from inside. They had an organization there called the Watchdogs. Now, once somebody says he's a watchdog, he means he's contributing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
He's watching what you're going to say,
yeah,
what you're going to do. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And they killed that thought. But also, I think the idea of Pan-Africanism is like Pan-Arabism. Those ideas of strong nationalism are over. Who is South African? Back then, it was Oliver Tambo did all he could to say it was not a black versus white struggle, and so that's how the ANC was. And Pan-Africanists moved out because of the communists came into the ANC. So, but the world is not divided like that anymore. But the parties that are running were built that way, So we're expecting carts, horse-drawn carts, to run the E-race, the E-formula. It's not going to work. We need new cars, new drivers, new thinking. But the onus is on those new leaders to excite people about the new world.
Are they getting it right?
Who
South Africa, do we have a crop of young leaders who are standing up and being counted? Because we look at our politicians. When we say leaders, we often confuse politicians and leaders.
Yeah.
They're sometimes very different things.
Yeah.
But the crop of politicians that we have now, are these people embodying those things that you've just spoken of? Or are we still on horse carts?
It's easier, isn't it? It's easier. I mean, in Springs, in Painville, I don't think we have any horses anymore, unless I must go down actually to go check. But we had horses until very, very late. I mean, because there are people who still have those horses. So there's a problem, for instance, in Grahamstown. People had a lot of donkeys. So, and donkeys lived about 50 years, 60 years. So they've been, you find all these feral donkeys in Grahamstown. Some people held on to them, and the kids said, I don't have use for these donkeys. They stopped feeding them. So there's going to be that, but the leader will come. When the time is right, the leader will appear. I believe that's what happens all the time, when the circumstances produce a leader.
My faith is not that strong, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Like I am one of those people who I firmly believe in justice, not like justice being done, but also being seen to be done. I am such a 1+1 type of person. Like and I realize that even during apartheid, you need the conditions gave birth to the type of leaders that you and so many others ultimately become, because the situation pushed for that. However, in this day and age, A lot more people are looking at I, me, my. It's let me just make sure that this corner of the world, my little corner, works. I've got electricity, especially given the technology that we have these days. A lot of people can genuinely live off grid. You are not going to
I think a lot of people can't live off grid. Most people, at least where I work, when we do stuff, people can't live off grid. But hey, empires have been built without electricity.
Yeah.
It's just not, electricity is important, but it's not the only thing in the world. There are many other things that people can do, people can focus on. They're going to change the world.
All right. So back to Jack's question then. What can we do as citizens who want to play an active role?
Yeah.
What can we do? I mean, you wrote that book a while ago, South Africa's Promise, and I think there's a lot in there that is absolutely relevant now, as relevant as the day you wrote it.
Yeah.
But what can ordinary people do? Because sometimes we feel a bit powerless. We're like, well, we see these polls come out. We see this party's getting that kind of reaction when people are asked. This party's getting that reaction. We have analysts on TV predicting things. We have intellectuals telling us what they think is going to happen.
There are political assassinations as well in the mix.
And what can we do?
Well, the first thing, we've got to go and vote, because it's a poor yardstick, but it's the only one we've got. It's the only lever of change that we've got. And you vote for the organization of the party that you feel is right for you. You know, some people that are parties they can't vote for, so they vote for what I call a voter dump, where you go, you look at the poll and say, okay, I don't want to vote for anybody else. I'll just give to these guys so they won't. But Bantu Olomisa was here last week, and he told us of what he did. I think they only have 2 seats, he said. Look, they reversed the SAA deal.
That's right.
So
it's in the news today.
You know what I mean? So there's a lot that we can do. I know it's been said many, many times before. The mosquito in the room. You know, there's something I like. I like weather channels. And there's what they call the mosquito index, to look at the mosquito activities for the night, you know, what it's going to look like. So go out and be the mosquito. You don't have to be as big as you are. You can just be very small and change things and be felt. And I think that's the most important thing. And also you know, I don't want to say work, because there are many people who aren't working, who are out of a job, but see what else you can do. Try to do something. Crisis creates opportunity. You know, if you want to make tea, you have to boil water. If you put your hand in the boiling water, you're going to burn. But you need that heat to to make that tea become real tea, or coffee, or whatever. So pressure and heat are actually very good for us, because they get us off our chairs to do something. We just have to refuse to be paralyzed. I met a friend yesterday. It was business has been, it's been going all right. And then everybody's been talking about the change of media. Everybody's been talking about how media is dying and that and that. I said, don't listen to them. Look at what you've done.
Yeah.
Look, just when you look at the mirror and look at and see yourself, say, hey, you're an amazing guy, because you've done what nobody else had done before. That you're going through a tough time now doesn't mean you're useless.
Yeah.
You know, so look at, that's why I like to look back. I like photography. So when you take photographs, after a while, you got to go back to some of your old pictures and see what you've done well, what you've done right, what you could have improved. Or sometimes just look at it and say, well, what a wonderful picture.
Perspective.
It's perspective. It's all perspective.
You know, I tell my friends all the time, we live in the era of Instagram. And what I mean by that is instant gratification.
Yeah.
How do we combat people not reconciling the fact that more often than not, things take time to change? Like we hear or see stories of someone becoming a millionaire overnight. From the outside looking in, we assume that, oh man, they just snap their fingers and they're millionaires. And that way of thinking is more prevalent amongst people in, I would say, not my age group, but like younger a little bit, the Gen Zs and whatnot. They are of the opinion that you can start something today and you'll start seeing returns tomorrow. Whereas the rest of us have the understanding that you have to put some work in order to get something out.
Mm.
How do we combat that way of thinking?
I think it's always been there.
Mhm.
Phil Knight had that problem when you read his book Shoe Dog, until the Japanese banker told him that, look, the bamboo is going to be taller tomorrow, so don't worry about it. Trees grow without making any noise.
Mhm.
And we forget that because there's a lot of noise. And I think people who tend to focus are the ones who tend to make progress, are the ones who are able to focus and not able to, they'll still hear the noise, but have the ability to ignore it.
Mm.
That's what makes champions, I think. To be able to say, I hear what this guy is saying, but bugger him, I'm going on with this. You may well be wrong, but fantastic. If you make it, great. If you weren't right, you had the experience. You've got the experience. And I think that's what we forget.
So there are a lot of people in South Africa who are very down on the way that the country's turned out after 30 years. And a lot of those people have a very justifiable point of view. They've been disappointed. They were promised this and they got that.
Yeah.
But what you're saying here too is that, and I think what you're saying too, Jack, is that things take a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you're not going to get exactly what you wanted. You have to, if you're so attached to outcomes that when the outcome isn't exactly what you wanted, you feel like the world is against you.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very childish way to respond to the path of time and to perspective, as Muzi put it. Do you think we could seriously turn, I mean, there was a period in South African history, somewhere around 12 years ago, where things were really on the up and up. It felt very optimistic. Felt like there was a burgeoning country where lots of people would have opportunities, where we would be able to grow the cake and everyone would be able to eat. It really did feel that way.
Yeah.
And most people felt they could buy into that idea. And somewhere along that way, we've lost it. And we can blame the ruling party, but I feel like that's too easy.
Yeah, it's too
because we're not taking responsibility.
Not at all.
And the world is also changing around us, and that's our context.
Mm-hmm.
We can't make the world conform to our purpose, which is to, grow our economy or whatever else it is, some small or large scale.
Yeah.
So where are we going to have to adjust our expectations to?
No, absolutely. There's a poem that I'd like to read by Langston Hughes. And the person who first told me about Langston Hughes was a friend of mine. Actually was my mentor, Nyakale Mokhosi. And it says, what happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? Or fester like a sore and then run? This drew a picture for me in Painville, because kids, we used to have a lot of sores. I mean, this was medicine, or at least it didn't reach us as well in Painville. So this poem, when I first heard it, I could see those sores, especially on the legs. It says, or fester like a sore and then run. Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrup sweet? Maybe just sags like a heavy load. Or does it explode? So let's explode.
Yeah.
Let's explode and make this dream happen. That's my view,
I wish I wish I could feed your passion into half of the people in this country. Genuinely.
Because apathy, okay. So let's just call it what it is. One of the reasons we need to do this show, and one of the reasons we're hoping this show will have an impact, and all the people we're talking to, even with the Burning Platform that we do with the political leaders, we're hoping that people will become enthusiastic about themselves. Because there's an enormous amount of meh out there. And I don't know how to combat that.
So there's a thing about a coach, about listening to the speak of your competitors. If they say we need to raise morale, there's no morale.
Yeah.
That where they talk about it.
Yeah.
We've got to do the stuff that excites people. Let's get more musicians singing. Let's get stuff happening. Because all of those things are the things that light us up. But those are the things that make us explode. And do the things we're supposed to do, and do the things that we have to do with enthusiasm. I always say fail with enthusiasm if you have to. Just go for it. Go for it.
Yeah.
And if it's a miss, it's a big miss. But it's okay. The line between genius and madness is very, very, very thin.
Yep. In fact, you'd be called mad before you're called a genius. Miles Davis used to say it all the time, that if you're going to be, like when he'd speak to his band, he'd say, if you're going to be wrong strong, right?
Yeah.
Go all the way. Don't do it half-assed. Right?
Also, Jack, the other thing that Miles Davis used to say is, let's write the new classics. So he did a song, Time After Time.
Yes.
And Cyndi Lauper, I think
Yes.
was the song. When they asked Cyndi Lauper, years after Miles had passed, what's the best song that you've heard? He said, I must say, it's Miles Davis' rendition of Time After Time. So here's taking jazz music to play pop music.
Right.
So if we're just going to look at history and look at the rear view mirror because it's so comfortable, we're not going to be able to explode. So it's look at the problems of today, find the leaders of today. Mamang your fella jail is over. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, Frantz Fanon, always says, we don't go around saying, free Steenhuisen, free Steenhuisen. So our problem is not big.
Yeah.
The opposition is not in jail. You know what I mean? So there are a lot of things that we've got that we can play with that can make us achieve the goal of what the Constitution says.
Yeah. And like as a person that grew up in a multiracial society. Like I started school in 1995 and I sat in a classroom. Noticeably, there were fewer black kids than there were white kids. But by the time I got to matric, it was 50-50. Like we were all Kes boys. We didn't really look at one another. I didn't see, I know a lot of people say I don't see race. But yes, you would take note of the fact that, for argument's sake, Gareth is white. But
I'll check. My two sisters are colored. When I registered colored to pre-apartheid. Yeah. So how do I see them? Do I see them as colored?
No.
I didn't. They're in my house.
Yeah.
That's one Ali Mazrui talks about. That Africa is what makes you black. I wrote my first book, Marketing Through Mud and Dust. One thing that tells whether a person is black or not, using that old definition, is whether you can dance or not. That's it. You find people with different
That
shapes.
leaves a lot of people out there. I've seen it.
Including me. So the guy
You're not black enough.
I tell you, I mean, even, what's his name? What are you going to do by standing on the wall? Because it rather not see me. So the worst thing, the worst insult. This was during apartheid. The worst insult was
yeah.
You dance like a white man. That's it.
It was cool in the gang.
Cool in the gang. That's what it was. So the whole thing is, whether we like it or not, you see, there are people who profit from race. There are people who profit from the way things are. So they will insist that it exists all the time. So they have to hunt it. They have to chase it.
Okay.
So talking about things dying, I went to a funeral in Guatemala. With my sisters, just one before that, and I think the last two people who spoke Afrikaans were very old. So when you could hear that, but it's going because it was and somehow Afrikaans was the lingua franca until the government in 1976 said everybody's going to be forced to learn in Afrikaans. But everybody spoke Afrikaans. My mom and dad spoke Afrikaans, like I say, my sisters. So it's that kind of thing. It's the artists who picture a new world, who imagine a new world. We need the imagination of how things are going to be, and you can't force it, but it will gradually get there. So what you experience that cares, a lot of people experienced before 1948. So it's nothing new, but it doesn't sell the narrative that gives some people the credential. Or also, they've never really experienced it. Right. They don't know that it's a world that once existed, that it is a world that can exist.
In other words, they only know what they know.
They only know what they know, and they make that sound like it's the only thing that actually matters.
It's that lived experience thing we were talking about.
Well, I think there's a huge difference between, and neither is necessarily completely right, and neither is completely wrong. But there's this idea you're talking about of like not being obsessed with race the whole time, because we are constantly told by the politicians we should be.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, being a race essentialist, where that is all you care about. And that's what, old school right-wing racists have in common with what you see in American politics right now, that everything is down to that. So there's that side, and then there's the side of like, don't notice race at all. Somewhere in the middle, we've just got to grow up about this.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Right. We've just got to grow up about it and realize, like, if it's a big thing to you, you got to spend a bit of time dealing with that, unpacking it, figuring out what your own prejudices, your own ideas of like your place in society, self-worth, and all the rest of it are. Unpack them, figure it out, because it's your journey to discover all that stuff and get better.
Yeah.
And for other people, it may not be important. And for some, it might be the most important thing. You can't tell other people what to do.
Gareth, I tell you what, I put something up on Facebook, and Nana Makanya commented on it and referred to this poem of Langston Hughes. It reminded me of Langston Hughes. But I'm going to read you another poem of his, if I can just quickly get it. And and the title of the poem is So Langston Hughes is very left. Why is it not opening up? Langston Hughes. So let me just get it.
Find it for us in the meantime. I'm just going to look at these comments quickly while you're finding it. So, Huge Reaction says, nonsense, or maybe my age is showing and I'm going deaf. I would have guessed 1995. They're talking about how old you are, Jack.
Oh, yeah. I don't look. I'm aging rather gracefully. Don't worry. But yes, it was in 1995, probably.
Can we include Pan-Africanism in the definition of racial essentialism? Well, again,
no,
we don't. But we also don't want to intellectualize this discussion too much now. So why can't we have leaders like Muzi's? There's too much to ask, says Azalea. See, people are saying you must stand now.
No, in my township, they say if people ask you to be a leader, you're a sellout. But listen to this. So this is Langston Hughes, extreme left. Let America be America again. Let it be dream it used to be. Let it be the pioneer on the plain, seeking a home where himself is free. America was never America to me. Let America be the dream the dreamers dream. Let it be the great strong land of love, where never kings connive, no tyrants scheme, that any man be crushed by one above. Then it goes on, it goes on, it goes on. I'm the poor white, fooled and pushed apart. I'm the Negro bearing slavery's scars. I'm the red man driven from the land. I'm the immigrant clutching the hope I seek, and finding only the same old stupid plan of dog eat dog, of mighty crush the weak. Goes on and 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 goes on. And then it says, we the people must redeem the land, the mines, the plants, the rivers, the mountains, and the endless plain, and all the stretch of these great green states, and make America again. Doesn't that sound like
almost sounds like Donald Trump?
That's where Donald Reagan got it from.
Donald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was first.
Right.
He said, so make America great again. So here are these right wingers. Well, right. Reagan was not actually as right as people think.
Conservatives.
He was. Conservatives. That's right. These conservatives, they get their inspiration from a leftist. So that's what the world is about. Read the things that you disagree with the most.
Yeah.
Start with those.
Right.
Start with those. Then you can, because then you see the world differently. The perspective, you're changing the lens. So in 1980, when they changed the lens, Reagan's writers, they came up with a campaign that worked. And Donald Trump obviously took it as well. It worked for them.
So shall we start Make South Africa Great Again?
or maybe what we should do is we should go and read Frantz Fanon, the guy who imagined apartheid. I think it was Van Onselen. It was in Stellenbosch. Let's go read Van Onselen's books or his thinking. Problem is that I can't read Afrikaans.
I'm sure there are translations now.
Probably, absolutely.
AI can do it for you.
And let's see what they, in their madness, what is there that we could take?
Yeah.
You know, I'm not saying we should go crazy.
No.
But
learn something.
Yeah, it does help to actually understand and to steel man the worst people. Because it's easy for us to just vilify and make a mockery of. And I see people doing this now with politicians. If you don't like the EFF, well, then Julius is just a demagogue who makes no sense at all. He's a lunatic. But when you actually take the trouble to listen to some of the things he says, and a lot of the time he's very sensible. I mean, I've had him in studio here before, and I've found him to be very sensible about some things. Obviously, we still disagree. That doesn't mean that either of us are idiots.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Oh, then once he's left, then I have to change my mind because I met him. No,
I mean, maybe people have so little faith in themselves. Maybe we're getting to something here. People have so little faith in themselves that they're terrified to hear something they might actually agree with.
Absolutely. And I think it's very difficult, but it's a necessary discipline to sit down and listen to the other person, and not try and speak while they're talking, and listen deeply, and then make up your mind. And if you disagree, and say, I disagree with you because of 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are the things that are important to me. Because I think in between those, the truth is somewhere in between that. I think I always say the truth is like an electron in an atom. We know it's there, but we don't know exactly where it is at one particular time.
Yeah.
Somewhere there's certain things that are good for you and for me. And if we find the right medium, and we never know where that right medium is, we'll be able to find the
I learned a trick from Dr. Jordan Peterson. So when you're speaking with someone you disagree with, when that person speaks, in your mind or even verbally, try make that person's argument towards yourself. So if Gareth and I disagree on an idea and he's making certain points, I need to try assist him formulate his argument against mine. Because what that does is I firstly come to truly understand where Gareth is coming from. But while I'm doing that, I'm also understanding my points as well that I will raise once Gareth is done. And I don't think enough of us do that these days.
And I think maybe also, let's not assume the worst of everyone who we disagree with.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Let's actually try to picture them as being the most virtuous person we might ever have met. Even if it's just for a moment, suspend disbelief and go, what if this is the most morally good person I've ever encountered? Just for 5 minutes, I'll listen to them as if they were.
Absolutely.
The most morally decent human being I could ever have encountered in my life. And therefore not immediately poison what they're saying with my own preconceived notions of whether they're good or bad.
That's what happened. You've been running the show on having different politicians. And when I listen to the guys, a lot of them, we have certain views, and when you start to listen to what they're saying, you go, oh, wow, I never thought about that. Actually, this person has done 1, 2, 3, or 4. That's why I enjoy that show so much, that Burning Platform, as you're having different politicians.
With Bantu and, even Gates and McKenzie the other day.
So you get to listen to what the person is really saying. Whether they mean it or not is not for me to judge. Let me listen to the words that they're saying. And maybe somehow there's always something I can hold on to. And things that I disagree with, for instance, the issue of xenophobia. That one is a friend of mine used to say, there's a reason why, as I said, in a mine dump, we lived in a mine dump. Says there's a reason why parents tell us there are snakes and monsters in the forest. So always know that, because we live in a world that's had some really bad experiences. We've had the Holocaust. And they start small. As Churchill warned, that people say things that just become fires that are so big. But if our yardstick, I know I'm picking one thing in the Constitution, if our yardstick is to free the potential of each and every person, then we can measure everything that we say. Just because you've gained something doesn't mean I've lost something. So let's find ways of making everyone gain. And people came to South Africa, as I said in one book. People came to South Africa because it was a promise for everybody. It was a promise that Africa is finally turning a corner, and everyone. It was what South Africa was what America was for many years, the land of dreams. That's why people came here. So we've got to find a way of making it work for everyone.
It's a good note to end it on.
Yep.
I think that's awesome.
Absolutely.
Mapelo
fantastic.
says, don't disappear for so long, Malume Muzi.
Oh, Malume Muzi, thank you.
Come to the show more often. I think that's absolutely right.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thank you for an awesome morning. And I hope you will have a great day from here on in. If you have only just come to the channel today and you are trying things out for the first time, then go along and like and subscribe. We want your support. We need your support. And we want to keep doing really, really cool stuff, bringing brilliant people like Muzi Kuzwayo in here.
Mm-hmm.
We will join you tomorrow, not for a live show, but there will be some interviews and some recorded stuff. There's so much material. If you haven't checked it all out, go and look at the catalog. There's so much to find that will keep you amused and entertained and informed and empowered.
Yes,
maybe
sir.
even inspired.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see you tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.